Hi, my name is James Andrella, and you are listening to the Back to Human podcast. If you've been following me for any length of time on social media over the previous few years, you probably learned that I stick to a select few different topics, one of which would be barefoot training and barefoot style footwear. This is something that I'm very passionate about because switching over to barefoot style footwear and barefoot training has absolutely changed my life. Back in 2017, I had reconstructive ACL surgery after experiencing a non-contact ACL tear, and I was going to change directions while playing flag football on Thanksgiving Day, a little turkey bowl, and instead of moving laterally, my change of direction was actually towards the ground. I heard an audible pop, and I just kind of crumbled. My feet came out underneath me, and I pretty much knew exactly what had happened and what the future entailed. So after the surgery, I had what was considered a full recovery, but I was still experiencing really, really bad knee pain, especially when I was coming downstairs. I thought this was just going to be it for the rest of my life, that I would experience this chronic knee pain, and that at 27 years old, things were just going to get worse from here on out. So luckily, I had the opportunity to work with an incredible strength coach named Troy Jones, which got me into barefoot training, and noticed that I could not move my big toe independent of my other four toes. So after working on this for several months, my knee pain went away, resolved. So I learned that the foot is an absolute work of art, and that what happens downstream affects what happens upstream. And the knee tends to be a victim of either what is happening at the foot or the hip. And in my case, it was the foot and the ankle. On today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with the founder and chief design officer of my personal favorite shoe brand, Vivobarefoot. On the show with me today is Asher Clark. Asher, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks a lot, James. Pleasure to be chatting to you right now. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. I've been really excited about this one. I actually have the Vivo on F Your Feet.
Can you say that on your podcast?
Yeah, by all means, feel free to curse. So I have Unfuck Your Feet on the back of my t-shirt. This was a design from Vivobarefoot that came out a few years ago, and they asked me with the opportunity to put it on the back of my shirt. And it just so happens, I feel like you guys come out with a lot of designs. So if you're the chief design officer, I love the colors that you're coming out with because a lot of them actually match my t-shirts.
Okay, so cool. Is that messaging working for you? Does that kind of cut through the kind of cognitive dissonance of padding and cushioning and sneakers as we know them today?
Honestly, man, not so much. If I'm being completely honest, people probably think I just have this weird foot fetish. Yeah. But the reason why I wear them is because I work with someone that has like hundreds of billboards over here in the US, all the way from South Florida throughout Tennessee and in several states. And over the years, everyone knows this guy's jingle, and they know like the phone number to call in this certain instance. So I'm like, over time, the more that people see this visual picture, it's gonna kind of go into their subconscious, and something's gonna click one day. It's like, oh, that's what he means. But I've never really had anyone ask me, hey, what does that mean? But one day, never know. I'd honestly love to get billboards up around the city around here that say "Unfuck Your Feet." I really think that would challenge people's thought process when it comes to purchasing modern day footwear.
Sure.
Yeah, man. So would you mind giving me a brief background on your history and what got you into the barefoot style of life? Because from what I understand, you're from a family of cobblers.
Yeah, correct. I mean, you may have already guessed from my surname, but I'm a seventh generation cobbler from the Clark's shoe family. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't really brought up that close to shoes. In fact, both my parents are actors. So I think my dad was a bit of a black sheep. Mm-hmm. Dare I say it, I guess I'm a little bit of a black sheep in that I never worked for the business. But what I do share with my ancestors is cobbling. So I guess that's kind of in my genes. And yeah, I was always into design and sport and performance. And I got into footwear because it really is the synergy of all those things, and also kind of a big part of culture. So it's kind of where culture, performance, and ultimately everyone everyone pretty much stands on 2 feet on one earth, and these days they wear footwear. So I was just really into that from a kind of product, brand, culture, socio kind of idea. And went and ended up, I studied at London College of Fashion, graduated around 2002, got one Young Designer of the Year, started working whilst I was at college for a brand called Kenzo, and that was when it was sports and fashion were kind of really kind of interconnected in the era of like Prada Sport and Yohji Yamamoto, and that's really where I kind of cut my teeth. One thing led to another, and we came to realize through a childhood friend of my cousin, actually, who was a tennis player, a designer, and dad was an Alexander coach teacher. He kept twisting his ankles playing tennis in his Nikes. There you go. I said it. I wonder how many times we're going to say Nike on this podcast. And so the first Vivo was in 2004, and he cut the sole off his Nikes with a bread knife, and did a bit of research. And the fundamental insight is that your feet have the same amount of nerve endings in as your hands, right? So in the same way your hands are made to feel, so are your feet. And it's a key part of your proprioceptive system. And ultimately, the information that your brain's getting from your feet, it's using to put your limbs in the right place at the right time, or create the right shapes to deal with the right forces, kinetics and kinematics. And it was really kind of at that moment where we realized that, isn't it incredible that shoe design has become completely disconnected from the understanding of feet and biomechanics, and that at some point along the line we thought we could fix a problem that doesn't need fixing, your feet. And so therein lies the kind of real beginning of my journey of unlearning everything I knew about cobbling and starting to really go on a deep and steep learning curve of biomechanics, anatomy, feet, and how we can make effectively the perfect shoe perfect for feet, or footwear, that is one simple job. It just has to let your feet do their thing. I've been on a very humbling design journey, and we've built a company around that, of making Vivo footwear. If I knew how long it would take or how difficult it was, I probably wouldn't have gone on the journey. But I think a bit of ignorance and a bit of grit and stubbornness will get you a long way. So many days as I sit here in front of you today, we're kind of still at the beginning of the journey, and actually our footwear mission is elevated a little bit, where our definition of perfect footwear is regenerative bare footwear, which is regenerative to feet and ultimately the way we move, right? And regenerative to the planet, ultimately, not just making something that's more sustainable, but in the same way nature designs, ultimately trying to make something that's net positive, and obviously underpinned by a company that is working in that kind of way as well. So that is the whistle-stop tour of how it all started and where I am today.
It's awesome, man. What a journey. Yeah. What a journey for you to walk on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one step at a time.
Yeah. Hopefully in barefoot style footwear. The cognitive dissonance that you mentioned before, I like that you bring that up, because it seems counterintuitive if you were to mention this to any athlete. You mentioned that the tennis player was constantly rolling their ankles. And what people assume today is that with this name brand footwear, and I don't mind mentioning Nike, if anything, I have a little bit of resentment toward that company, just from what happened with myself. But people assume that with modern day footwear, with these large heels and the supportive cushiony, maybe a little bit more of the ankle support, that they're actually buying something that's going to benefit them, that it's going to help them play better. But meanwhile, the foot is its own little perfect structure. You can't make perfect better. So if I understood correctly, when you first started out, you weren't designing barefoot style footwear. So what was it like when you had that like light bulb moment?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the light bulb moment, if I'm honest, was an interaction with a gentleman called Lee Saxby, who understood barefoot and biomechanics, but mainly through the lens of evolutionary biology, where it's obviously bigger than just feet. You could call it natural health, a kind of something that's starting to really take hold now in an alternative, but dare I say it, natural approach to lifestyle, where in the same way our feet are the best bit of technology to ever go into a shoe. Our bodies, millions of years of evolution, haven't just done a pretty damn good job with our feet. They've also done that with the rest of our bodies, right? And we are at best when we're enabling or allowing our bodies, minds, and selves to be as close to nature or natural as possible. Everything from sleep, food, movement, footwear, as possible. And and feet are a big part of that. So it was like this, the thing I mentioned before, this idea of kinetics and kinematics, ultimately forces. And if your brain is not able to feel the force in terms of your three main gears, i.e. standing is one body weight, walking is two body weights, and then when you click into a run, it's three body weights. I think it was this moment where it was really looking at running form, and you have jogging and you have running, and jogging is like a hybrid movement of walk running, and you can only jog when you have padding under your heel. So a jog is a heel strike, right? And proper running is where you have a very clean central posture, and there's greater steps and everything's happening underneath you in a kind of bouncy kind of way. And it was just understanding really that if you get in the way of the natural proprioceptive system, then you fundamentally get in the way of natural movement, and then you cause problems up the kinetic chain. Was that kind of real moment, and that was a crazy light bulb moment, because you're like, surely they're not getting it. Surely they're not all getting it this wrong. Do you know what I mean? But then you could say that about big tech, big pharma, big agriculture, big food. Obviously, they're connected. That unfortunately, I think we're living in a world right now where there is a result of humanity kind of emancipating ourselves from nature, ultimately the ecosystem as opposed to the ecosystem, and we think that we can cut corners, feed ourselves better, and do things in more of an efficient kind of way and a more synthesized way that's ultimately having a detrimental impact on our health, and shoes are a big part of that problem.
Yeah. And so we have big shoe, and I do believe it's all connected. You have big shoe, big pharma, big tech. Well, with the shoe industry, and I've taken the Vivobarefoot health course, so you have stats in there, like there's over 600,000 forefoot surgeries a year, most of them being in women. And well, you got to look at like surgeries. So we have bunionectomies, we have people that go to get tension relieved because of plantar fasciitis, and these problems keep coming back. And as you said, it's like, if you had that moment of clarity where it's just like, people can't be getting that wrong. Yeah. It's like, what the hell is really going on? We're so disconnected. And I see it as a bigger picture. So if we're putting on these massive heeled cushiony shoes, we're kind of like numbing out. Subconsciously, we're numbing out. It's almost like we're fearful. We can't step out into the world. We can't step out into nature, which we have the evolutionary process. Like, this is where we came from. We're so disconnected from that. And the farther that we get away from the earth, from nature, the sicker that we become. So It's all one interconnected web. And what you'll see, you mentioned the heel striking as well. If you have a kid and they haven't been exposed to this modern day footwear, or they're not in cleats or anything like that, you're not going to see the heel striking if they go for a sprint. A young child, if you have them barefoot and they're running out on the street, they're going to have pretty much perfect running mechanics, and you won't see the heel striking. Because if you were an easy way to correct your running for anyone that's listening to this, if you're an adult, which I don't recommend because you're probably going to hurt yourself, but if you were to go sprint out on concrete, I want you to try heel striking. Let me know how that feels. You would never heel strike again. So why are we doing this in the supposed technology that we have with this modern day footwear? And I found a quote of yours that says, honor the foot, innovate sustainably, and make shoes that let your foot do its thing. And I think that's what we really need to do. We just need to let the human body do its thing.
Yeah. And we like to talk about normal versus natural. Just because it's normal doesn't mean it's right. Do you know what I mean? And then we also split that up now, is that you have shoes that make your feet shoe shaped and weak, and you have footwear which is designed from the foot's perspective. And to your earlier point, like, the body is amazing and it will adapt and do the best it can in the environment that you put it in. You know, but in the same way, it can negatively adapt if you put it in the wrong shape or the wrong environment. So, you know, chairs and seated posture and shoes that, if they're not the shape of your feet and they support, then it effectively kind of changes the morphology, particularly in kids. To your earlier point, is that a child's foot is effectively 70% cartilage until their formative years. And so it's like it's almost like there's plasticity to that it really goes wrong when you put your kids in footwear that is shoe shaped and that's supported, and that it actually changes the shape of the foot. And a weak kind of off-center base of support isn't a good and healthy base of support for any kind of movement, right? So you quickly go from the carefree child with perfect biomechanics running around the pool, or, you know, perfectly able to run on hard surfaces, because, you know, we didn't evolve to run on soft manicured lawns or on carpets. You know, there was a lot of compact earth. And yeah, look, shoes or footwear is a big part of our evolutionary heritage, but really as just tools to protect us from thermal damage or from cuts. But if you were, you know, like our great ancestors, if you're on your feet all day and you're hunting or gathering, and there's a lot of work you need to do, you're not going to be wearing pointy shoes with heels. Yeah. Because ultimately it will impact the way you move pretty drastically. And that's where we are today, right? Is that fashion and culture have driven a kind of socio-cultural kind of phenomenon, if you like, where we think that, you know, heels and pointy toe shapes fundamentally came from the functional need of having to put your feet in stirrups and your heels not slipping through those stirrups. So the kind of prestige of owning a horse and a beautiful pair of shoes fit for riding became the kind of cultural kind of fashion statement or necessity of that time. And effectively, we're still elevating heels. We're still looking down and wanting to look at a pointy toe shape to feel like we fit in, or the unfashionable foot is looking fashionable. And it's a big challenging narrative to kind of to break out there. Yeah.
It's what I like to say is, just because it looks good doesn't mean it is good. So it's become just this fashion statement in order to wear this footwear. And there was an incredible stat, since you mentioned the kids and the cartilage in the coaching course, that I was stunned by. I think it was 75 to 85% of kids in preschool all have a misaligned big toe.
Yeah.
And I actually received a message just yesterday from a mother that her child is waking up in the middle of the night complaining of foot pain. And she asked me, do I think that this has anything to do with the footwear? It's like, absolutely, because environment dictates behavior. The environment that you are placed in as a human is going to steer what habits that you have. Same thing goes for our foot. If we're putting something with 26 bones, 33 joints, and over 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments in this narrow toe box environment, we have the SAID principle, specific adaptations to impose demands. You are asking the foot and the body to adapt to this negative state. There can only be negative results that come out of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, like whilst we're on stats, you've got kind of over 70 or 80% of Americans suffer from some kind of foot pain. Over 70 or 80% of recreational runners in America suffer from some kind of running related injury. And, you know, as humans, we're born to move, born to run. If you read Dan Lieberman's paper or read the book by Chris McDougall, and you don't get animals in the animal kingdom. You don't get 70% of lions suffering from knee pain as a result of running, or 70% of kangaroos suffering from ankle plantar fasciitis from jumping, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. So therein lies a huge red flag. Like, what are we getting in the way of as humanity from the ground up? And obviously we're here today talking about shoes, and one of the biggest impacts on mortality is immobility, right? Ultimately not moving. And if you're suffering from any kind of injury, feet up the kinetic chain as a result of feet, then you're not moving. And of course, if you're not moving, you're losing. And that is bigger than cancer, smoking, drinking, not moving, and is the biggest impact on mortality in the Western world today, right? So, we've got to keep moving.
Yeah. We need to get people moving pain-free.
Big time.
Yeah. So hopefully people that are listening to this, a light bulb is going off and you may be reconsidering what you are putting your foot in. And I know when this moment of clarity came for me, I looked at my Jordan sneakers, I looked at my Nike sneakers, and forgive me, I probably could have went about this in a better way, but I didn't want to donate them. I didn't want to give them away to someone because I know that I was just going to be harming someone else. Mm-hmm. So I just tossed them. And I know that Vivo is very big on sustainability. And I believe that you have the Vivo program where you're actually trying to keep shoes out of landfills. So I don't know what you can possibly do with other name brand footwear. Maybe there's a program like that in the future where you can change whatever shoe that you currently have, instead of tossing it, maybe turn it into a barefoot style shoe. Who knows? Some idea to ponder. But what should people be looking for in their footwear?
Ultimately, we call it the 3 Fs, formerly known as WTF, which is what the fuck, or wide, thin, and flexible, or fit, flex, and feel is what we call it now. So wide is effectively fit. You're looking for footwear that's foot shaped, not shoe shaped. So have a look down at your feet. Particularly have a look at indigenous or unshod populations and have a look at what their feet look like. They are wide and there's a lot of air and space between the toes. So you're looking for something that's foot shaped, and you're going to be pretty uncomfortable looking down at that because it's not what you're used to. The next one is flex, and that is ultimately you need a flexible shoe to allow your foot to flex, and ultimately that's your muscles and tendons in your feet to do what they were designed to do, and that's your kind of shock absorption and your energy return. So the tendons and the muscles, tendons act as springs and literally put a natural spring in your step, and along with the fascia. And the muscles obviously enable all of that to really give you that energy return. a strong, healthy foot is the foundation of strong, healthy movement. And in fact, we did a study with Liverpool University where after 6 months wearing Vivo shoes, which, there's no secret sauce, all it is a thin sole and letting the feet work, actually can improve foot strength by up to 60%, which is a pretty phenomenal kind of notion, right? Is that just by being barefoot as much as possible, you're going to put 60% more strength on your foot, which doesn't matter what you wear on game day, whether it's a pair of Nikes or whatever it is, what you wear on Friday or Saturday night. Having 60% stronger feet has got to be something that, we're all up for.
Mm-hmm.
And the final thing is feel, or thin sole. So fit, flex, and feel. And feel is about having as thin a sole as possible that enables your feet, which are the ultimate movement sensors and have the same amount of nerve endings in as your hands, which we previously spoke about, to feel the ground and ultimately give your brain all the information it needs to create the right shapes to deal with the appropriate forces, whether you're standing, walking, or running. So those are the things you're looking for. And you're really, all we're trying to do is make as little footwear as possible. And your feet are perfectly capable to take care of the rest.
Just provide them the environment.
Yeah.
So we got fit, flex, feel, which I want to touch on that feel bit a little bit more, because you mentioned proprioception, how like 70% of our feedback from our feet dictates how we are going to be moving. I'm taking a neurology course. You also mentioned the hands. So anyone that's listening to this, your hands and your feet are what interact with the environment. So they are going to require more conscious effort. Think about it. You reach for a glass with your hand. You need the dexterity in order to actually grab it and hold it. Your feet are capable of grabbing things as well, or they should be anyway. If they haven't been numbed out or dulled, and the muscles are strong enough to do so. So your hands and your feet are what engage with the environment. They require more conscious effort. You don't open a door with your elbow. You don't walk with your knees. You're stepping on the ground. Ideally anyway. And then we also have for the alternative, the WTF. I kind of like that one a little bit better, wide than inflexible. Most people listening to this probably be like, what the fuck have I been wearing? So
there you go. That can be your next t-shirt. You can keep that.
I like that. So we got FFF, Triple F, or WTF.
Yeah.
So the alternative, the flip side is what impact is the name brand footwear having on our feet and bodies currently? So what do we see with typical footwear, and what are the long-term implications of wearing this footwear for decades on end, hours at a time each day?
Yeah. No, I mean, ultimately, if anything that you over support or anything that you compromise in terms of shape is ultimately compromising its functionality and mobility. And a immobile foot is creating issues up the kinetic chain. So the common issues are plantar fasciitis, Morton's toe, inverted toes, and weak feet, which ultimately start to get that supination or the collapsed arch, and the weak ankles, and everything starts to roll in, and you start kind of, you tend to see it a lot in older people, is when they walk from side to side and they're kind of walking with a gait across the outside of their feet, compensating for their weak arches. Often they're in inserts where they're walking like an ape on the outside of their feet, rather than walking outside, ball, and then toe off. The major issues is when you get a significant issue in your feet, it affects everything else, knees, lower back, walking gait, and it just brings pain and discomfort into the rest of your body. And as we spoke about before, if we all need to move a lot more regularly than your average person, and if we're not able to move because of pain and chronic pain, which is a huge problem, not just related to feet and movement in the Western world, then starts to massively impact our quality of life, our well-being, and ultimately our mortality. So it's a big problem, honestly. It's a meaningful problem that shoes are trashing our feet, and they're trashing our planet, and we've got to get all over that basic, real challenge.
Yeah. I wear the shirts out on the trails sometimes.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm wearing only Vivobarefoot. It's pretty much the only thing that I own at this point. When I'm out on the trails, I'll see people that are like laboring and they look like they're in so much pain. And
Yeah.
I personally know that it has a lot to do with their footwear. But when I'm out there walking, I feel energized the entire time. I don't get fatigued.
Yeah.
And something that I've been interested in for years, obviously because I had the ACL tear, is I feel like it has a huge impact on how many non-contact ACL injuries that we're actually seeing. So I found a study that says the real function of the big toe and our feet are meant to splay, similar to our hands, where we kind of spread our hands. Our feet are meant to provide us a base of support.
Correct.
So what I personally found, and maybe you know a little bit more about this as well, I'm not saying that all cases of non-contact ACL tears are due to this, but when you're in the narrow toe box cleat, your big toe does not have the ability to abduct anymore. So your base of support is lessened.
Yeah.
This is going to stem upstream, but then it kind of leads, correct me if I'm wrong, to this overpronation where you can't get into supination. So what's going to happen is now your tibia is going to get into internal rotation and your hip's going to follow that as well. It's almost like you get this little like snap.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, it's actually a question that I wanted to ask in the future, but I guess we can get into it now, is for Vivobarefoot, do you guys have any thoughts on getting into the athletic world? So a basketball sneaker, because right now I'm playing basketball daily for the previous few years without any incidents. Maybe I'll roll my ankles from time to time, but I could say being in this barefoot style footwear for years and training specifically for this, I would not recommend it to anyone that's just a current couch potato to go try this, because you will probably end up getting hurt. But my ankles, my feet have gotten stronger. So if I do roll my ankles, it's really not so big of a problem. I'm usually back up on my feet in 2 days or so.
Yeah.
But do you guys have any plans to get into the athletic world with like a basketball shoe or perhaps a football, a soccer cleat?
Probably not directly, but I mean, we kind of say that that ultimately you need to kind of move slow, run slow. So take your time, right? And in performance or competition sports like basketball, I think the way you might play basketball or tennis or various court sports in a cushioned or supportive shoe is going to be different to how you would do it effectively barefoot. The way you move and the way you land are going to kind of change a little bit. I think we're just about to launch a kind of performance training product called the Motor Strength, which is built with a bit more kind of durability and lateral kind of stability in, all foot shaped and the same fit flex feel as before, but ultimately just has a bit more durability, so you can start to really use it in hardcore training, let's say like CrossFit, or in court sports, dare I say, a great tennis shoe, or in basketball where you've got a bit more toe protection and durability. So we're not directly getting into that stuff, but I think a product like that would probably be the most appropriate when you're ready to take your barefoot game to the courts.
Mm-hmm. That takes a lot of like just courage to be able to try something new out, because this is all we've known. This is all we've known to play sports in, would be the Nikes and whatever tennis or volleyball shoe. It's like, to try something different, there's some trade-offs with this. There's the perceived benefit of speed and perhaps a little bit more bounce, as people would like to call it. Maybe you feel like you jump or you perform better in the modern day cleat or athletic shoe, but you're giving up the stability aspect. And I feel like if you're almost taking the brakes off. So if you're wearing that type of footwear, sure, you may be able to run faster, you may be able to jump higher, but you're taking the brakes off. So if you're a Ferrari, if you're a Lamborghini, you're going off that mountain eventually. You're predisposing yourself to more injuries, more ankle sprains, more perhaps ACL tears, or even going to the general population. You were mentioning pain before. I've had people that have worn this. My mother got rid of back pain, and people wouldn't really make that correlation. But as we were talking about, it goes all the way up the chain. So if your feet are weak, your feet are your foundation, your feet are the roots.
Yeah.
I like to say the deeper the roots, the stronger the branches. So the stronger your feet are, the stronger the rest of your body's going to be.
Yeah, 100%.
If you don't have strong feet, I don't feel like you are actually as strong as you potentially could be as an athlete.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, big time. We're noticing that a lot now, that a lot of tier 1, tier 2 athletes across hockey, tennis, American football, NBA basketball have now got and are now using Vivos as part of their training program as a training tool, which is coming through their strength and conditioning coaches. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty simple thing to get your head around, is that the stronger and more stable you can make your feet, the better that is, regardless of what you wear on game day, right? Mm-hmm. And in the same way, you pay a lot of attention to the strength, conditioning, mobility of the rest of your body. It obviously makes a lot of sense to do that on the key part of your body, which is always in contact with the ground. So it's happening, and I think that's a great thing. And I think people are going to start to really feel the performance benefits, and perhaps start to make the correlation in ACL tears, non-contact ACL tears, or the improvement of rehabilitation back from injury, etc. Mm-hmm. Just let nature do its thing. It's been pretty good at it for a millennia.
So were you met with like a lot of cognitive dissonance yourself when you started to?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's just like, it was crazy, right? It was like, why are you making the shoes that shape? Surely you need a little bit of heel drop. They're too wide. They look ugly. Barefoot will never take off. The customer's not ready for it. It's always been, and that's what I've always found incredible about it, is that I'd stand up in the court and put hang my hat on this. It's just evolutionary fact, right? Let just a strong, healthy body all the way from the ground up is what it's all about. And shoes, like a lot of other things, kind of get in the way of that, right? And as a species, mortality rates, I think now for the first time, are going down. We're fundamentally going up. We're fundamentally dying younger than we were 5 to 10 years ago. We're more unhealthy, and we're more kind of stressed out, and we're probably getting more injuries as a result of sleep, food, lifestyle, and footwear.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Clint Ober.
Yeah, a little bit.
Earthing. So I had him on a previous interview, and he was mentioning how he had his light bulb moment. He was an electrician back in the day, and he saw these this Japanese tour bus. These people came off the bus wearing these huge white Nike sneakers, and he was wondering, I wonder if the rubber soles on those shoes are affecting us as humans, because we've been disconnected.
Yeah.
So what materials are Vivos made out of? I know that you use a different few sources. You do a lot of collaborations and such. What materials are they made out of? I think I've even read that you create some of them from algae blooms.
No. So we use we fundamentally use kind of bio, recycled, and or natural materials. So the kind of circularity goal is made from nature to be returned from nature, to be returned to nature, effectively biosphere circularity, or technosphere circularity is effectively made from polymers in the future, kind of fourth or fifth generation feedstocks, to be continually recycled to close the loop that way. And so, yeah, effectively, the majority of our shoes right now are either made from a percentage, soles wise, are made from a percentage of natural rubber or a kind of percentage of recycled rubber. And the truth is that they're not grounded or earthed, as you'd say, but we are looking into doing that with some of the product right now. And it's an interesting kind of touch point, that, right, is that the body is a battery, the planet is a battery, and cellular health, kind of give or take, it's negative or positive, is ultimately the key kind of conductor on whether a cell is healthy or unwell. And so, yeah, at a cellular level, based on the limited research that I've looked at, there is quite a lot of strong evidence that suggests that earthing or standing barefoot on the planet for 30 minutes a day or swimming in the ocean can positively impact recovery, decrease stress, blood pressure, and generally kind of impact our well-being.
Mm-hmm. I was curious if the ultra blooms, because I believe those are made from the algae, if those would ground you, if like that material was conductive.
It's not conductive, no, and it's actually quite a small percentage of algae. It's still a really huge challenge is to make a product 100% natural or 100% recycled or from biomaterial. Mm-hmm. And it's one we're working heavily on. But yeah, as we sit here right now, we're at a kind of relatively nascent moment in our journey to make the perfect footwear, or a product that's, let's say, made from nature to be returned to nature. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You get in there. You get in there.
Fine.
Yeah. I appreciate the transparency. I love that about your company.
Thanks.
So I know that rewilding is a term that you guys use. I'm not sure if you're the one that coined that, but I've actually heard on a previous podcast that, I don't know if it ever came to fruition, I believe it was either an education center or warehouse that you guys were looking to take outdoors. So what does rewilding mean to you?
Well, it effectively means, like, we call it kind of human nature, or we are nature and nature is us. And so rewilding to me is effectively getting as close to our natural environment and a way of living as possible, because that's how we've lived for the majority of our existence in the bodies that we all find ourselves in now, which are kind of 200,000-300,000 years old, right? And so for the majority of that time, we've lived in rhythm with the seasons, in rhythm with the circadian rhythm, with dawn and dusk. We've lived, really close to the soil, and there's an amazing synergy with our kind of the macrobiome and the microbiome. Effectively, soil health is linked to gut health. The food we eat, the community, the healthy communities that we used to be kind of surrounded by, the way we move, etc. So kind of rewilding to me is effectively getting back to that, getting as close as possible to the core essence of living in tune with nature. And I think that's, I don't think we're ever going to go back to, or I think it's unrealistic that the planet is going to go back to, completely living off grid in a rainforest. But there's a lot of things we can do in our modern lives that align with natural principles that will have a meaningful impact on the way we feel, and so that is rewilding for me.
What would you say would be like 3 things other than footwear that people could implement into their lives to rewild themselves? So you have soil. What are 3 practices?
I would say kind of eating whole foods and seasonal foods, effectively kind of organic and seasonal, which has which is a lot more likely to have all of the important kind of minerals and good stuff from the soil in the actual food. Sleep is obviously incredibly important. So switching technology off a few hours before you go to bed, trying to keep your sleeping rhythm kind of in line with when it gets dark and when it gets light. Often doing some breath work to reduce stress, increasing oxygenation, regulating the nervous system, and effectively promoting relaxation and mindfulness is just helps you kind of defog and chill the hell out before you go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Nurturing are really important. Your community, both your kids, family, friends. They say in the blue zones, which are the zones of the world where people live for an extraordinary amount of time. All those things that I mentioned are really prevalent. But a strong sense of community is meant to be a massive driver. And then the 2 other big ones, and one that I have part of my daily routine to keep my head on straight is waking up and doing some movement, groundwork, go for a little run, and then the final thing is thermogenesis or the use of hot cold. The easiest thing to do, obviously, at home is take a cold shower. And the crazy thing about that is like just 3 to 5 minutes in a cold shower, like decreases inflammation, improves immune function, and literally makes you feel happy. It can increase. I was listening to a Huberman podcast the other day, and it can increase dopamine. Just having a cold shower for 3 to 6 minutes can increase dopamine for up to 4x, and literally make you feel happy for up to 6 hours of the day, right? And that's just a 3 to 5 minute cold shower. So, add that to your routine and movement and you will feel the difference within a week.
It's a bit of a hard sell, the cold shower, to some people, because it can be miserable at first. And then you'd be like, how is that going to make me happy? I'm going to hate it the whole time.
Yeah, but just try it. It's obviously brutal to get in, particularly when you haven't done it. But then, just score yourself on how you feel when you get out, and the payoff well outweighs the challenge of getting through it. So, whole foods, sleeping well, sense of community, finding your purpose, movement, and cold showers. It's all right there at your doorstep.
Simple.
Yeah.
Now, I imagine you're not doing your morning run in Hokas or anything like that.
I'm not doing my morning run in Hokas, no.
Awesome. Love it, man. So I also know that you guys have Vivobarefoot experiences, and this is something that I'm interested in. You mentioned community. I just had a baby. He's 7 months old right now, and now I get to look forward to the future and what kind of community or environment that I want for him. And the typical classroom, just for myself, isn't something that I'm interested in, although I went through high school, college in the classroom setting with all these lights, which aren't really natural, sitting for hours on end. Something that I'm really looking forward to in the future is I can fantasize and imagine an outdoor classroom where these kids are just coming together, they're playing, or even adults. I feel like this is very important for adults to do. And maybe I'm a little bit of a child still. Maybe I need to develop even a little bit more maturity, but like when was the last time you climbed a tree as an adult? Like these are things that I feel like are important, because when I'm climbing a tree, there's the sense that, all right, I might fall out of this and I could potentially hurt myself, who knows, die. Yeah. But it really it's like a puzzle. And I think that this type of stuff is more important to kids than the curriculum that they're currently going through. So what are Vivobarefoot experiences, and who are they for? Are they for adults? Are they for kids?
Yeah, so or someone that colleagues just arrived from his trip in Asia.
Mm.
Vivo experience is a good example. Is a sport that you may or not have heard of. You could call it sport, a pastime, called swim run. It was invented in Sweden, and it's not triathlon. It's the simple act of, the ultimate purest form of human locomotion, running through beautiful off-road kind of nature environments, and then hitting the water and swimming, and then running and swimming and running and swimming. Probably the kind of ultimate expression of reconnecting with nature, where you literally have no kind of a wall, so to speak, right? And you start in, you have a simple wetsuit that unzips at the front, and you have a pair of Vivos on with grip and deals with water really well. And with your partner and in an environment with lots of other pairings, you set off and run an incredible course of swimming and running trail, basically.
Nice.
That's a cool example of an experience that we back and are proponents of.
That's what these are for.
That's what those are for, yeah. So that right there is the Hydra. So the Hydra is the ultimate swim run shoe. So it has super sticky grip and amazing lugs for traversing, works off-road and on wet kind of granite rocks. Yeah, it's got an upper that has that molding on the top, which gives you the durability, but that thin single ply mesh, which enables the water to flow through the product, ultimately giving you a low wet weight and low water drag. And really, the ultimate swim run shoe is the ultimate trail running shoe, right? Because you need breathability, you need durability, you need incredible grip, but you need the water to go in and out of the product really quickly and your feet to stay dry. So yeah, that is, and of course, fit, flexible, feel.
Yep. So for anyone that's watching this on YouTube, I should have shown this earlier. So wide or fit here at the top. So that would be the W out of the, and then thin. So thin soled, you don't have a massive heel lift in the back.
Yeah.
And then flexibility. So this thing is very, very extremely light.
Yeah.
And it can fold on itself, which you probably would not be able to do with your favorite pair of Nikes or such.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing, man. I remember I was in a group chat of a bunch of coaches, and one of them would do triathlons. So they're biking, they're running, and then they're swimming through open water. And he mentioned one day that there's like this depression after the race. For some people, like it's this deep depression afterwards. And what made the most sense to me, I could absolutely be wrong. And this one is like, you're during that race, you're literally doing a Vivobarefoot type experience, a swim and run. It's like you're finally connecting with the earth again, instead of going in our caves, our little holes that we create for ourselves, and not connecting with nature. So you're picking up all these electrons from the earth, you're literally recharging yourself, and then you're like, you know what? No, I'm gonna go sit on my couch for 8 hours a day. It's like that's humanness to me.
Totally, yeah. It's as human as it gets, man. Blue-green health is swim run, right? And it's right back to the earlier point. What is rewilding? What can we do to be healthier, happier people? And swim run is a kind of beautiful expression of that. It's moving, it's being in nature and in the ocean. Vitamin C and vitamin N, right to the main vein.
Love it, man. So are these Vivo experiences in the States right now? I need to do a little bit more research myself.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's various partnerships going on that you should check out, and of course also check out Vivo Health, which is our health platform that gives tips on transition, on foot mobility, all of the kind of basic stuff you can do to rehab and move like a supernatural human being. And then we're going to get deeper into the kind of world of natural health. We just launched a course with a guy called Zach Bush, breathing courses, and start to really touch on all of those points that we were talking about just now around what you can do to rewild in modern environment. What can we all get our hands on? So yeah, go and check out vivohealth.com.
Will do. Yeah, I love Zach's stuff. I was listening to something of his the other day, and it almost brought tears to my eye. I'm like, holy crap, someone understands what I've seen and felt for the previous few years. So it's amazing that you guys are working with him.
Yeah, it's powerful. He's a serious sage of our time, and it's a pleasure to work alongside him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you have the one with the athletic shoe?
The motor strength is out in a couple of months. So yeah, watch this space. It's an amazing new product, and ultimately kind of really delivers on an important need of durable, kind of high intensity kind of strength training. Of course, with everything barefoot.
Awesome. And besides that, what does the future of Vivo look like? So I know that you have the free Vivo program.
Vivo Take Back. I guess the big part of Vivo's future is we'll launch in June, the second week of June, and that's called Vivobiome, which is a kind of scan to print circular footwear system, effectively making made to measure, made locally, made to be remade product, bespoke footwear based on a kind of foot scan. So we're launching that in the UK first. It's a huge innovation piece that we're launching a test pilot program. We're marketing campaign in June, second week of June. Then recruiting 200 test pilots in the UK, and they'll go on a three tranches of footwear where they get their first footwear in August, and then their second one in November, and third one in February next year. And we'll be then ironing out all the kinks in terms of performance, fit, value proposition, whilst we look to onshore our first little kind of additive micro factory somewhere in a secret location in Europe. If we can get that right, we'll aim to roll that out in a more significant way in the next kind of 3 to 5 years globally, and it will probably become a kind of we hope it will become a significant way we make product, not for stock, but for not for stock and mass markets, but ultimately for individuals and foot by foot and person by person.
A little bit more individualized. So they'd be getting 3 different footwears at different intervals. So
the first interval is only the first round, and then they feed back, and then we get we integrate that feedback based on fit and function, and that happens 3 times, and that will be the final learning phase of the kind of mass test pilot program.
That's incredible. Yeah. Very interesting. Now, do you account for potential growth? So they're scanning each interval, I would imagine, because I think
they're scanning each interval. Yeah. So we'll potentially account for growth. We don't anticipate there's going to be that much change over the 6 to 8 months, but ultimately that will also depend on whether they're new to barefoot or not. So yeah, that's the idea. Is the shoe, your foot scan today is going to be different to your foot scan in a year's time, and of course all feet are different in terms of shape and girth. So if we really want to deliver on our vision, we've got to make things locally, and we've got to make things bespoke. And additive manufacturing is likely to be a key technology to unlock that vision.
That's awesome, man. That's did you ever imagine that your stubbornness would lead to this?
I still suffer from that today, so I think it's kind of a big driver, honestly.
Oh man. Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that, because I think it's important to anyone listening to this. Once you start your barefoot journey, what I've personally noticed, and I've noticed with clients as well, is that initially the footwear was a little bit big, which, I mean, it's going to fit differently than your current modern day footwear. And my feet, as well as others, have actually grown. So I've needed to actually size up after some time. Yeah. And with that, with your current model, how would you suggest people, if they're making this transition, what would you recommend they do size wise? Do they go up, down?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's whatever kind of feels good to you. Some people like their shoes to fit a little more true, and sometimes they like them to fit a bit more loose. You just got to give your feet the room they need without having a kind of dangerously oversized shoe. Obviously, if you have one size fits all, some feet are really wide or really thin, and it's tougher to get that size perfect. Wherein lies the challenge that we're embarking on with making shoes for individuals. So yeah, just give your feet enough room for fit, flex, and feel. Yeah, the closer you are to barefoot, the better, basically. I think that's probably a good kind of end to a really interesting conversation, and one that I've really enjoyed kind of going on with you, Jane. So a big thank you. People are starting to now encroach on this space, but yeah, big thank you for reaching out, and a real pleasure to be on your platform and talk about unfucking your feet. And hopefully the few more people go on the journey as a result of this conversation.
I hope so, brother. And the pleasure was mine. Thank you so much for joining me on this today, Asher.
Cheers. Bye for now. Yeah. Take care.
God bless.
Cheers. Bye-bye.